I'm incredibly excited to be here. I've been a fan of Breaking Bad. It's a tremendous show since the very beginning. I'm going to introduce everybody in a second, but let me just run some things that Breaking Bad, stop me if this is wrong, has won 10 Emmys. It's won TCA, AFI, WGA, WGA listed it as number 13 of the 101 best written TV series of all time. And it's won numerous awards, about 50 awards, and been nominated for 151. So it's really a superlative show, one of the best ever. And we're here to celebrate that and the work of these fantastic writers. So let me introduce them. At the far end is he's been on Breaking Bad since season 1. He's written numerous episodes and has also directed the episode Dead Freight. He was a co-executive producer in the last season, George Mastras. Our next person, panelist, was Vince's assistant on X-Files and then season 1. She was a writer's assistant, wrote an episode in season 3, a freelance, and then joined the staff in season 4, executive story editor Gennifer Hutchison. Our next panelist went to NYU with Vince, wrote on The Lone Gunman, X-Files, Reaper, joined Breaking Bad in season 2, co-executive producer Thomas Schnauz. Next has been on Breaking Bad since season 1. This was his first gig, was writing on Breaking Bad, correct?
First series gig.
First series gig. All right, well, it's only downhill from here. He's wrote and he directed the penultimate episode, Granite State, co-executive producer Peter Gould. Next panelist was originally an actor. He joined in season 2. He's directed the episode Rabid Dog, co-executive producer Sam Catlin. Next panelist was also a former actor, dancer, wrote on Reigns, Eli Stone, joined in season 2, wrote episode Ozymandias, the fantastic episode. Co-executive producer Moira Walley-Beckett. And then I would like to present to you your reigning god of TV drama. Avert your eyes. You are not allowed to look on his glory. You are not worthy. Vince Gilligan. Hello, motherfucker. How are you?
Good. Very nice introduction. I like that.
Yeah. Vince, my first question for you is: did you see the Discovery Channel, piece on the guy with the 400-pound scrotum?
I did.
Okay. Well, I saw that and I thought, you know who has cojones bigger than this right now? Vince Gilligan. He's got to be feeling pretty good. What a year, okay? You had Emmy wins for your actors. Great reviews. Everyone's saying this is the best show ever. You had a big party in a graveyard at the end. I don't know what that was about. You're all over the news. You were on Talking Dead, right? How was that?
Talking Dead was fun. That was I wish we had done that for every season.
I didn't see it. I didn't see it. And then you're all over the news. You're on Colbert. You're doing Community coming up. There's a YouTube clip of you opening the new DVD set. I don't know why you opening a box is on YouTube. You've got a pilot at CBS, right? You just did the Austin Film Festival. They read some old script that you had thrown out. You got paid $60,000 supposedly to speak in Florida. Are you getting paid tonight?
Only 50.
Only 50. Are you getting paid tonight? I'm here for free.
No, because I love writers.
Okay,
so yeah, I'm here for free.
Good. You've got Better Call Saul, and you've got a tremendous Sony deal, which is an 8-figure deal. And so my question is that 10 million or 99 million?
If you count the 2 digits to the right of the decimal point, it's an 8-figure deal.
All right, beautiful. I love that. All right, well, listen, it's all well-deserved, okay? You're worth every penny, my friend. Because last night, to prepare for this, I watched a fantastic documentary I highly recommend. It's a 2-hour documentary called Half Measures, and it's a bonus feature in the box set of the complete series, right? So I got a copy of this from Sony. You'd think I would get a free barrel and DVD set. They lent me this thing. I had to drive it back first thing this morning. But anyway, I watched it. And what you see on this show is just a tremendous amount of craft and art and skill, but also love and support and collaboration. And I'm sure that starts at the top. So not only did you have a wonderful vision for this show, but I think you've set the tone, and that became very clear in this documentary. So I kind of want to talk about that. So Peter, when we were talking yesterday, you were talking about the tone of collaboration on the show. Could you tell us what you were thinking?
I have no idea what I said to you.
Come on, dude. Come on, help me out.
You know, I think one of the things that Vince did that was really generous, but also I think in its own way kind of shrewd, was he created a feeling of ownership for all of us. That you know, this was when you'd say, "This is your show, Vince." Vince would say, "No, it's our show," and you know, it became true for us. We lived in the illusion. It really helped to invest us in our work, and he did. I think he went out of his way to help us learn all together as a group, to write the show, and to shape the show. So it made a big difference. And one of the other things that he did that was, you know, really fantastic for some of us was to give us the shot to direct. And we all had the chance to be on the set and help to guide the episodes and follow them all the way through. And Vince, I know there are circumstances where showrunners sort of keep the writers walled off in the writers' room and don't really let them participate in production and post-production. And Vince would kind of open it up, and especially the first couple of years, we'd all get together and watch the final mix playback together. It was wonderful. We were in a theater, and we'd get to kind of savor each episode, and then after the notes were given, when the notes were being done by the sound crew and the post crew, we'd all go and get really rip-roaring drunk, and that was wonderful. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, the truth is I don't buy it. Nobody's that nice, and you know, this is Hollywood. It's filled with assholes. A lot of us are here tonight, so I don't know. Tom, you went to NYU with Vince. Tell us what happened, please.
He's insufferable, complete bastard, actually, to hang around. And no, Vince is. What you get is, you know, what you see is what you get. He's just always been the nicest guy. I mean, we worked on our student films together.
What was the film about? Tell me about that.
He did a film called Mime Pays about 3 clowns. I played a clown named Jocko. And we kidnapped a mime because he was horning in on our corner. And we were going to go kill him, but the mime escapes, and there's a chase ensues, and it was crazy.
You know what's upsetting about that? That's actually a good idea for a film, but I just picture
he just sold that as a series.
I believe it. Son of a bitch, I'm available. But I just picture the clowns dragging this mime out, and they're like giving him a Goodfellas stomp down with the big feet, and they're hitting him with pies and stuff. And the worst part is nobody can hear him scream.
I should have had you rewrite this thing, man. That's so much better. What this was he had a barrel of gunpowder in his back, and they chained it to him, and then he pulled the cork out of the bottom, and he runs off, and they're going to light the other end of it.
Do you have it? Do you still have this film?
Oh, yeah, we got to see it.
Oh, yeah, I'm trying to see this.
I can die happy.
Tom is an
more than once.
clown.
We saw it a couple times.
It's about 12 minutes long, and it should have been about 2.5 minutes. Honestly,
just to tell you how crazy he was then and now. He asked me to sleep in my clown outfit to get into character, and I told him I did.
In the same bed.
I just crumpled up the costume and put it under my mattress. I told him the next morning that
the level of detail, you can see that on Breaking Bad.
I know.
In every
and there was
shot,
another
so
detail.
it's
Another detail in the film was that he had me a missing finger
Yeah.
He wanted me to. My character had a missing finger for no reason, and it was never focused on. It was never.
Was it like a
mentioned.
big Mickey Mouse hand, like with the missing finger, or it was
I don't
just...
know what was going on,
yeah,
but I did it.
okay.
I acted the whole thing with my finger bent over. So
All right. Well done.
it was a tour de force.
Gennifer, you were Vince's assistant on X-Files and then season 1, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, seriously, tell us what were kind of what was it like in those early days when you see the transition coming from X-Files? What were the tools, the methods, the processes on X-Files that came over to Breaking Bad, and what were some of the adjustments that you kind of saw since you had a bird's eye view of this entire process?
Right. I think the big thing that Vince probably brought from the X-Files was just the way the story breaks work. Chris Carter he does the note card system, but very succinct note cards, and that was sort of the big thing is if you can't get it in those 3 little lines, it's too complex of a thought, so you have to really distill it down. So I think that was one of the big things that Vince brought, but I think the big adjustment that he made is the X-Files didn't really have a traditional writer's room. It would be more small groups breaking stories. It was a little more mystery of the week, so it's easier to do that. So I think really having that very close-knit, everyday kind of writer's room was probably the new thing, I would say, that Vince did with Breaking Bad.
Mm-hmm. And George, you joined in season 1. You were right there, right?
Yeah.
And so what about that? I know that the first season was originally a larger order. I think it got cut back because of the
it got cut back by one episode, or
Yeah,
It was 2.
2 episodes. Okay.
And so what was the intention going into breaking the first season, setting up the characters? I mean, you had seen the pilot. And the reason why I'm kind of jumping into this is because I want everybody to get a chance to speak, and we've heard about the Mr. Chips become Scarface. Everyone's sick of hearing that, Vince. I'm sorry. So we're just trying to liven things up. So go ahead, George.
Well, that was sort of we talked about that premise pretty early on. I think the one thing that the writer's strike did was that, from what I recall, I mean, we had this whole finale set up for season 1 that was, it was like, oh, it's your first season, you have to have this huge finale, and it was going to be a big, big thing. And I think that episode was almost like where we ended up at the end of season 2. So after we came back with the shortened season, and, people were like, wow, this show is kind of, it's good. We're going to have a second season. It allowed us to rethink things and slow things down a lot. And so I think, I think the show changed its pacing a little bit. It got a little bit more deliberate. We spent more time. It became a little bit more character-driven. It was always character-driven, but it became more, less, we really got to advance the plot and do this great showmanship type stuff, and allowed things to breathe. And so I think, the deliberate pace that Breaking Bad had, I mean, I think the show had moments of, you'd have several episodes where you'd really spend time with these characters, and then all of a sudden explosive things would happen.
And
so
that'd be your
developed,
episode.
That sort of developed, I think partly because we had this opportunity to sit back and kind of retool because of the writer's strike,
So in that first season, you hear a lot of times when people just have a first season that they just don't expect a second season, and they expect to kind of just get the story out. I mean, on The Shield, we certainly were convinced we were going to be canceled after 4 episodes, so we were just like, who cares? I've heard that about The Sopranos, that Chase was convinced there was not going to be a second season. Was that your understanding, or did you leave stuff in the first season to go into the second season, or you were just like, let's just try to stick the landing and it'll be tomorrow's problem?
Well, everything we did in that first season, we did before the first episode ever aired. And I was and you guys can back me up, especially Peter and George, who were there right from the get-go. I was very neurotic about, I wanted to keep as many plates spinning as possible. I wanted to tap dance as fast as we could, because I was afraid of being uninteresting. And like George just said, left to my own neurotic devices, if not for the divine intervention of the writer's strike in 2007, we would have thrown the kitchen sink at that first season. We would have ended it. I guess we could talk about it now. We were going to end it with Gomez getting shot.
Yeah, Gomez
right?
was going to get shot for a season.
Gomez was going to get shot, and I don't think I've ever told anybody that. Actually, it doesn't matter now. Tuco was going to kill Gomez, right?
Yeah, I think, or else he was going to be like in some kind of weird coma state, but couldn't like tell.
Well,
Hank
Tuco was going to shoot Gomez, mortally wound him, but he's still alive, and Walt runs up a beat later and sees Gomez, and wants to help Gomez, but doesn't know what to do. And Gomez sees that he knows Tuco, and then Walt hears sirens and he runs off. And then the beginning of season 2 is going to be, oh, Gomez is alive. What's Walt going to do?
The last image was going to be Walt covered in blood, running up an alley with police, sirens coming.
Yeah, right.
And I think I don't know how it fit in, but I think the other idea. Boy, I feel weird even saying this, was a home invasion.
Yeah.
There was the idea that Tuco, there'd be a home invasion, and Walt would be forced to take the money out of the crawl space or out of the
air duct or
out of the air duct, and Skyler would be tied, Walt Jr. would be tied up, and they'd see him pull the money out, and they would. We were just gonna.
We were going to leave it all on the field at that.
We would have killed the show. Yeah.
And it would have been fun, and it would have been exciting, but it would have left us with. We wouldn't have been able to get through. I don't know how we would have been able to get through 62 episodes at that pace, that overly accelerated pace. I feel very lucky that I was saved from my own. They weren't bad impulses, but they were less than confident impulses, shall we say.
Why? Because you were a first-time showrunner, or because you didn't know what the material was yet? There's one. It sounds bananas, by the way, but anyway. but the idea that I believe material reveals itself. So, and it takes a while to figure out, oh, this works, this doesn't work, and you try on a lot of different stuff. So that's the usual process, I believe. But did you not know in the writing stage, because then you had to, like, when you saw the material after it was shot, and you were, in the cutting room and
no, I
and
just
all of
didn't
that?
know how people were going to react to it. I remember, I love Frank Capra, and the opening line, before, when you read his autobiography, it opens with, there are many sins in filmmaking, but the cardinal sin is dullness or boredom. I forget how he worded it. But the worst thing you could do is be boring. And sometimes we take that to heart, even beyond all good sense. I mean, the best possible, and it's hard to know. It's hard to know. And you can't see the trees for the forest, but it's hard to know when you are being interesting enough versus not quite interesting enough. And the perfect version is you tell the story as slowly as possible, while still maintaining an audience's interest. But it's hard to know just where that line in the sand exists, wouldn't you guys say?
Because on network television now, it's impossible to do what Vince just described, because they keep wanting to speed things up. And it's just like, if Breaking Bad was on a network channel, it would just be, we want more and more. Not enough is happening. Not enough is happening.
Well, you came in on season 2, correct?
3.
Oh, 3. Okay. But you guys came in on season 2, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's when
and you're both coming from an acting.
That's when it got really interesting.
Actually,
deliberate.
I think season 3, though.
Actually, that's not true. Let's
Season
just say
3 really
this,
went.
that the show catapults when Gennifer joins in season 4. That's when it gets really bananas. So
Thank you.
That's enough for you, Sam. But now, Moira, you coming in on season 2, what did you see? Because you're bringing a fresh perspective. What did you see that was there, and what did you think? Did you feel like, it sounds like, was the question at hand pacing? Or was it story? Or were you saying, oh, this is, how did you approach the material when these guys had been in the trenches for the season 1?
It was definitely too exciting and too interesting.
No. Try to dial it down.
Yeah, we dulled
right?
it down.
Yeah.
We really made it cerebral.
Great job, guys.
And no,
That was the year you did the Fly. You two did the Fly episode.
No, that was season 3.
season 3. That's when
Oh, I'm
we
sorry, it was
really
Vince
slowed
never
it
actually
down.
watched
Well,
the
it
series.
couldn't get much slower than that.
No, I mean to me, I didn't have that experience. I was impressed just because the premise is so fun and exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I was really impressed that from the pilot to the rest of the first season that I actually found it refreshingly paced. Like it wasn't like, oh, okay, now he's this badass drug dealer and he's kicking ass and taking names. It was like, well, what do? You got a guy in your basement. What do you do? Do you kill him? And then it's like, well, they kill him, and it's like, oh, we're never going to do this again. But then it's like, okay, now we're going to bring. I thought it was very well paced in the whole sense of process. Mm-hmm. And I also feel like the thing that happened to us in season 2 that I always forget about is that Tuco was going to be our bad guy for the whole season.
Yeah, what happened?
Raymond Cruz had a contract conflict.
Yeah, he was on the closer.
Yeah. And we were going to have him do all kinds of badass, murderous stuff all the way through season 2, and we lost him. Third episode? Second episode?
And
Yeah.
we had to swap the second episode for the 5th episode
right.
to get the people, the folks, the producers of the closer were very good folks. They were very nice folks, but they needed him. They bent over backwards to break him loose for a 7 or 8 day working day production period. But we had to swap episode 2. I can't remember why. Why did we have to swap 2 with 5?
He wasn't available until the middle of our
Yeah.
season, but we needed George's episode to happen second.
But we
And
shot
so-
it 4th or something.
So we
like
shot 4th or 5th. It was
Makes
it
my
was
brain-
5th. It was 2 and
Yeah.
5.
So how far were you into breaking that season? Had you broken all the way through, or you were?
We had
kind
to
of-
accelerate it because we knew that's what it was on the production calendar. We could only get them for the time period of the season 5 of the episode 5 shoot, so we had to break the first 5 faster so we could swap 2 with 5. It was I can't even. It makes my head hurt even trying to remember it. It was very
I'm
difficult.
Saying, but didn't
lot of
you
bourbon.
in season 2? Season 2 is the one with the plane crash, correct?
Yeah.
So didn't you break that whole season before?
No.
Well, this is part of the
Thank
myth here.
God,
I'm
no,
glad
bless
we're
you.
clearing this up.
Yeah.
I thought you broke that whole season
No,
before
I
you
wish we
shot.
had. No,
Well, why are
we
you spreading these lies, Vince?
because they make me look good.
Somebody
But
find
if
out
I
on
could tell the
YouTube.
truth to a bunch
But
of writers.
season 2,
We're pretty
We
one-
found out
organized
before
about that
production,
plane
long
crash
before
stuff.
production commenced, that we wouldn't have Raymond. And before
Long
Sam
before?
goes on, there was something else that appealed to you about the show, as I recall. There was a particular line of dialogue. Was it? Do you remember? Do you remember what I'm
Peter.
talking about?
Oh, this is so mean.
That's okay. Let's be
yes, it's. I'm trying to remember what she really said. It's.
It's, I forgot
Wendy-
my root beer.
Whoops.
Wendy is. Wendy, the crack whore, is with. I'm watching season 1, and this is
Meth,
what
for God's sake. It's not
Meth.
crack.
What show were you writing?
Gotta watch the show.
I gotta watch the show. I hear wonderful things. It's in season 1, and she's starting to have sex with Jesse in the Crossroads Motel. This is what I'm watching to prepare for my meeting with Vince, and this is when I knew I was in love with the show. And I think the line really is. It was explained to me in my first day in the room. The line really is what?
I forgot my root beer or something
And
like that.
I thought she said, "Oops, that's my pooper." I honestly thought that. It was in context. It would have made sense.
Honest mistake.
So did you mention that in the meeting?
My
Is
first
that- Is
day.
that why you
First
hired him?
day in
Because
the room.
he
My first day, I was like, I'm so excited to be part of such a brilliant, rule-bending show. And then, it was some ordinary line like, I left my root beer. And I was like, had to get my agent to get me out of here.
And we're all looking at each other like, who the fuck is this guy? Who did we just hire?
That the paperwork had gone through, so there was nothing to be done.
And so, Moira, what were you thinking when you, obviously you heard all the dialogue correctly, but what were you thinking when you came into season 2? What did you want to bring? And also, having been an actor, how did that affect your writing? Because, I mean, you've really got tremendous talent on that show, great actors, they can handle anything. So did you draw on any of the tools that you had as an actor?
It's kind of a bonus, I think, because when you're schizophrenically sitting in front of your computer writing and saying all this shit out loud, it kind of helps for 2 reasons. One, to give you an understanding of what's sayable, as opposed to these brilliant things that you type that nobody would ever say in life, but are incredibly, prosy, and you're impressed with yourself. And then secondly, on the set, actually, there's actor language. There's vocabulary that you have that's to your advantage to be able to talk actor.
But Vince sort of knocked that, disabused us of that way of talking to actors.
Why?
Well, pretty soon we started calling them acty or talky.
Or meat puppet. Yo, acty.
Acty, love that. And then, talking about these
joke.
It's the Writers Guild. It's
Never
okay.
happened. Never.
Yeah. And then talking about these early days still, what was your intention? I mean, was there a theme you wanted to hit, or were you? I know you've talked a lot about this character was interesting and you wanted to put him in motion, but was there something that you, there's an incredible amount of beautiful filmmaking in it, so obviously that was part of your intention there, but what did you want it to say? Like, if you only got that one season, what did you want? Just that it was a good story, or that you examined that character, or was there, what were you, or did you not think about those larger questions at the time?
This is an excellent question, because it seems it's deceptively simple. It's a very good question. I've loved TV my whole life. I've watched as many hours of TV as anyone has a right to, and I love the medium. But I wanted to do something different. I guess the impetus to start with, the thing that excited me was, it's hard to tell. An idea hits you, and you pray to God it'll be one of those Archimedean eureka moments, and you really hope. And I had that with this when I was talking to Tom on the phone.
Now you actually stole the idea from Tom, is that correct?
I stole the idea from Tom.
Now, Tom, you want to talk about that? Yeah.
It's a legal thing right now. I'm not supposed to talk about it.
We both signed non-disclosure agreements.
The pain is coming, just so you know.
But I knew I loved the idea, and when you love an idea, and a lot of folks, it's a good room to talk to, because there's a lot of writers in the room. You guys, we don't have to explain in great detail the feeling you get when you have that feeling. You shouldn't look too closely at it. If you're lucky enough to have that eureka moment, which eureka moments, at least in my professional life, have been few and far between. You don't want to look too closely. So I couldn't have told you, probably, if you had asked me this question in the first season, what was it I hoped to accomplish, other than to say, I want to put on a show that's different from any other show I've seen, at least in a subtle way. And the best way I could describe it in that first meeting with Sony and AMC was, TV is a show about enforced stasis. Some of you guys have heard, I probably told this before, I'll make it quick, but it's like Marshall Dillon in season 1 of Gunsmoke is the same as Marshall Dillon in season 20, and that's by design, so that when you invite Marshall Dillon into your home, you know what you're going to get. It's like inviting a friend into your home. That's the way TV historically has worked, where characters, and we did this, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's part of the historical shape of the storytelling. And we did it in the X-Files. Agent Mulder would shoot someone. We shoot some guy in his own apartment one time. The next week, there's no mention of it. There's no blood stain on the carpet. And that's not a failing of the show. It is an instance of a show hewing to the historical rules of television. But I like the idea of a character changing, and so I pitched it as a story of transformation from that first meeting. The guy changes. later on, I think I realized there was so much more to the story. But having said that, there was so much more to the story that I could not have dug out on my own. If I had had enough time to write every episode of Breaking Bad all by myself, it would have been a much poorer story. Because with the help of these folks here and putting all these brains together, you have something that is greater than the sum of its parts. And it would not have been the show if I could have done it all by myself. It would have been a much poorer. I'm repeating myself. It would have been a much poorer show. So, you find out what it is sometimes only in hindsight.
Was that always a central question when you were breaking story in the room? Was that something that had to be addressed in every episode? How is Walt changing? What's different? What is the new layer? Or was it simply, what would happen next? That's the plot advancement, but you also have the character advancement. And was that not only true for Walt, but true for other characters? Did you start applying this to Jesse and Skylar and everyone else? So let me just open that one up.
We had a mantra, really. It was, where's Walt's head at? And that applied to all the other characters. Where's Skylar's head at? Where's Jesse's head at? And we would spend countless hours in our seedy former phone sex offices in the bowels of Burbank.
I've been to those offices. They're disgusting.
There's mystery stains. I'm just saying.
I was just like, you guys,
yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. And we spent countless hours asking that same question for all of our characters over and over again until we knew. And so it wasn't so much we were projecting Walt's progression or someone's progression. It was just allowing the circumstances to guide us.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like the thing that Vince really taught us and was very disciplined about was that there was very little what do we want to have happen. It's what would he do next? What would he do next? Not to, we would come up with these great scenes or, ideas, but it was really step by step, what in this position, knowing what we know about this guy, what is his next move? And that process and the taking the time to extend, like, what do you do when you've got a guy in your basement, I mean, it's a great setup, but like the idea that to slow down and say, well, what would he do next? And then what would happen? And then it sounds very simple, but there's so much, I'll definitely echo what Tom said, there's so much pressure and so many other shows to do like, well, what do we want? Or even worse, what do they want? What does the audience want?
Or this would be a cool moment. Let's shoot for that and just make it fit. Make
Reverse
the puzzle
engineer
pieces
from that, because we got to have that, because
We
everyone wants
did
to
do
see
that sometimes, though. We didn't always
Sometimes.
go brick by brick.
Tom,
we complete.
Tom,
Hey,
I'm talking.
I'm so fucking sick of your bullshit.
Plane crash.
We would, but what would happen frequently is that we would think, okay, this is what's going to happen. There's going to be this amazing scene. Walt is going to, somehow he's going to find a way to blow up Tuco's. And then we'd say, okay, that's going to be episode 5. And then we would find that, this is for example, it's not specific, but we would find that, wait, it takes a lot longer to get there than we thought. Because, and I think that's what Sam's talking about, the discipline. We have to get the character to that point. Frequently there'd be a time, well, why doesn't Walt just take out a gun and shoot this guy? And we would, because then there was the feeling sometimes where you'd want to jump to that. You'd want to jump to because you knew there was the threat of violence on the show.
Where does he get that gun? He doesn't have a gun.
Yes, and is he ready? Is he ready to do that yet?
Yeah.
Isn't he gonna struggle to find another way? And that's frequently what would happen is we'd have like a set piece or something that we'd be thinking about. The example that always occurs to me is at the beginning of season 5 when there's that big magnet caper. And we had this, we knew there had to be some result to Gus having been caught. We knew there was going to be evidence, and the evidence has to be destroyed somehow. And so we came up with this really fun set piece, which is, of course, which is fun. But then it felt, as it sometimes did, we would work the whole thing out and say, well, this feels empty. Why, so what's the point of it? And then there was this, this inspired moment where somebody, we were talking about the dialogue afterwards, and how do we know that worked? And Walt said, I don't remember who pitched this. Walt says, because I said so. And suddenly, there was a reason for the sequence. And the reason was this was another step on Walt's descent or ascent or his, whatever you want to talk about, the journey. And we would kind of, I'm peacemaker here. We would do both things.
This was the dynamic in the room,
This is it.
by the way.
Yeah.
So you're really kind of starting at the beginning and working your way through. You're not saying, it sounds like, on many TV shows you have those rules of, well, we have to show he's the best at what he does, or he can't look stupid, or we have to go for the evil MacGyver moment, or whatever it is. So you have, it sounds like you're really starting at the beginning and working through. So let's talk about the process. I was gonna do something else, but let's talk about the process. What's it like? How do you, does everybody work up pitches and then you come in and you listen to pitches and say, let's do that? A lot of rooms work that way. Does everybody kind of start on a blank page and people start saying, oh, and you're asking questions and what goes on the note card? Who decides what goes on the note card? Is everybody in agreement? George, could you walk us through that process a little bit? Well,
The first thing that goes on the note card is Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and Act 4, and that usually takes about a day to write correctly. And so we just kind of talk and bullshit. So that's day 1 of the week. Day 2 of the week, we sort of, just talk and bullshit. And then day 3 of the week, get around to sort of pitching. And, it's pretty much a free-for-all. I mean, beginning of the season, we'd start generally about what the season is about. I think it's probably like this in most rooms, and where are we going, where the character's head's at. And that would go on for several weeks, and then it was like, okay, then we get back to the quote unquote brick to brick, and so what happens in this episode, and then you really get into nitty gritty of where's Walt's head at, where how do we get Jesse cooking again? He shot someone in the face. Why? How's he ever in a million years going to do this this job, and how do we get him back into it? And that may take 4 or 5 episodes before we get him back to the point where he's cooking again. And so, it started sort of on this macro level and then got into the real nitty-gritty of it. And then by the time it went through this whole kind of process, I mean, I guess there's sort of a purpose to the madness of these really intricate sort of cards, which thankfully I didn't have to write because my handwriting was nowhere near enough. So
you did that on
I was
purpose.
the only one that was got out of that role. But once it was really codified on these cards, you felt like, okay, this is the story. And we'd go back and we'd change some stuff because you have to in a serialized show. But for the most part, I mean, that really firmed things up in people's minds, and that was it was just sort of like building a brick wall all the way up through the whole season. Very, very meticulous. So this wild kind of spinning of what's going to happen and putting things up season-wise, that pretty much just happened at the beginning, but then we really got into the bricks and mortars of it. That's sort of what my impression of the whole.
And Gennifer, was there consensus? It sounds like there was a lot of time. Was there always consensus? Was there always, there must have been people holding out on certain story points, I don't buy it, that kind of stuff. What was that like?
Yeah, there was always, there was a lot of debate on a lot of stuff. I mean, there were definitely ideas that everyone loved and just immediately were like, that's perfect, we have to do that. But there were definitely story points where, we'd have one side of the table liked it and the other side didn't. And with Vince was always sort of like the final word, but Vince really also wanted all of us to be on board with something. I think it was maybe once or twice where it was an executive decision of like, no, this is what we're doing. Like, we would discuss something until we had kind of come up with the thing that basically made us all happy, or until we wore down the one person who was like, I don't like it, which was usually George or Tom. No. We all had our moments. Like, Moira and I definitely had things that we were against, that we would
like
argue
what?
against. And what was some? The weird thing was like Lydia's 2 mismatched shoes. I think we had a big conversation about that. So
Yeah.
we lost that one. because we're ladies and like it's hard for
Yeah, we
ladies
had
to have
some- we had
mismatched
some
shoes and
Skylar
not
stuff.
realize that. So I
Yeah.
think that was our big argument. But by the time the card was done, we had pretty much reached a consensus on things. It was really a group effort.
Did you ever? I'm sorry. Who said?
Well, I was just going to say, the debate wasn't just, it's not just, okay, what's going to happen, but a lot of the time we'd be debating, what should this character do at this point? And so what should Skylar do? She should leave the guy. She should do this. She should do that. And we would get very, very passionate
Very
about
passionate. One time, Peter was so passionate that he practically stood up from the table and he was like, "If she doesn't leave, she's a moral coward."
I forgot about that.
I have no memory of that.
But the thing about it is that material, it wasn't just an argument between us. That was an argument inside the character.
Yeah.
That was material that all, I think, enriched the scenes and went into sometimes the dialogue. One of the things that we would really talk about, because a lot of the show, if you watch it carefully, a lot of the time two characters or three characters are arguing over what do we do next. They're arguing, what's the right thing, what's the most effective thing to do now, what's the right thing to do now. And we would take those roles. And sometimes we had, like a family, we would have the thing that we would go to. And, I was, certain of us were very worried about the fate of the kids and what's it like, what's the right thing to do as a parent. And some of us were more feeling like, just get on with it, let's go. And those things, I think, all went into...
And George always wanted to blow something up, and I always wanted to kill somebody.
Usually a child. Usually a child.
Smother somebody with a pillow,
Yeah.
perhaps.
So it doesn't sound like there was ever a point where you were against the rest of the room.
There probably were, and and I'm so glad these guys are up here for a lot of reasons. One of them being, it's as Jenny was explaining it to me the other day, it must be like the pain of childbirth, because there's so many particulars I don't remember that these guys can clue me in on. Was there ever a time it was me against all of you guys?
Yeah, I definitely think there were times when that happened.
Like, do you have an example? I can't think of any examples.
There were
Season.
two, there was
It's a safe room. You can
killing-
speak here.
Killing Mike.
Yeah.
Killing Mike.
Oh, yeah.
He really,
Killing Mike,
really
that's
didn't
true.
want him to go.
I didn't want him to go either. I'm with
Yeah.
Vince on this one.
Nice.
Remember?
Side with Vince. That's brave.
Yeah, we had to convince you.
He's got $99 million. I'm with Vince.
I think hiring Tom, I think that was the
Hiring
we were all in
Tom.
a debate.
Yeah.
All against it.
Here's a look into the room dynamic. These motherfuckers ganging up on me constantly. I'm just sitting here minding my own business. I was stopped paying attention actually a long time ago. But keep going, pile on.
We had our cowboy teaser. That took a while.
Yeah, I wanted to do something in 1912, the
Hey,
year that New Mexico was.
We might still do this, so I don't know if we...
Oh, okay. All right.
Did I not want Mike to? Was I arguing for Mike not to go?
You were
You were.
very
I'm not.
strenuously.
I'm not being disingenuous. I swear to God, there's so much of this I've already forgotten. I mean,
No, he blocked it out. He
the
was-
particulars of it, not because of lost interest, but just because it's all kind of a blur. So I was, okay.
You were just.
You loved
You were
him.
worried
You
about
didn't want to lose
also,
the character.
You
It
were
was-
concerned.
Yeah, and he's a useful character. You were worried about Walt.
And
not
you
having
were like,
a
how are we going to
resource.
fill the last 8 episodes?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's
What do we
right.
have?
I did say that. I remember that now.
And
Yeah.
you didn't want to tell Jonathan Banks that.
I was scared. I wound up telling him in person at Aaron Paul's engagement party. Because I felt like, he's not going to respect me if I don't do this face to face, and I don't see him that often. So, and then Melissa Bernstein, our producer, was like, "What is wrong with you? Why did you do that?" Anyway, he threatened to punch me in the heart.
Yeah, because that's the thing. He wants to punch you in the heart. You
He
have to
says
be
that a
careful.
lot. The more you threaten to punch someone in the heart, the less meaning it has every subsequent
better
iteration.
punch him in the heart eventually.
You better just punch me in the heart. You better stop warning me in advance that you're going to do it. I can't take you seriously if you're going to warn me you're going to punch me in the heart. I just need to do it. Yeah.
So let me ask. So that's the breaking process. What about then you go to script, and how much discovery? Because I've heard you say that you felt it was broken in enough detail that anybody could write it. right? That any of the writers could step in and write that script.
Could write their version of it, but yeah.
Yeah, but how much discovery is there when you go to to the scene? I mean, is the dialogue all pitched out and everything, or because a lot of times, when I look at material, we could break it in the room this way or that way, but until I see a script, I don't really know what the episode is, because I might feel like, oh, the scene's going on too long, or I'm away from this character, or for me, it's about, the script is about a rhythm, and so very often, I have to try a lot of different stuff at scripts. So I tend to want scripts to be rewritten a lot. You know what I'm saying? And I kind of find it in the writing. Oh, you hate it.
No,
So
I mean,
you
and
want it
listen,
all
by the way,
broken
there's
out.
no, and you guys know, there's no right way to do this job.
Clearly, yours is the right way, mine is the wrong way. But
There is no, I will say it again, there is
that's why
no
I'm here
right
to
way.
learn.
But I personally hate rewriting. It doesn't mean I don't do it. It doesn't mean we didn't do it. But I want to lessen it. I want to keep it to a minimum. I don't want to find it. I don't want one writer finding it, even if it's me finding it in the draft. I want 7 writers finding it in the room as much as possible. Which is not to say that there was no discovery, because that would be a very boring process. I mean, you guys jump in here
There was
and here.
very few times, though, where it'd be like, you know what, we don't need this scene. I'm thinking if there was one scene with Hank and Marie at the airport where, like, later on we came back to it and said, we don't need that scene because later on, stuff that's very common, I think, with other shows. But I mean, to me, that was one of the, people ask, like, what's the episodes that you're most proud of and stuff like that. Like, these, everyone is in all the episodes. I mean, really, when those episodes when we put the last thing that we would do was very ritualistic. We'd put the episode card, we'd write the episode number when it was broken. And it was broken. I mean, that, people would come up with dialogue and stuff like that, but like, I would say that at least 75% of the work on the episode is done, all of us in a room, and it was that's why I feel such, ownership and a sense of, sort of threaded throughout all the different episodes, and I'm sure people doing episodes that I've written, because, it really was a hive mentality or whatever it was, but the job was the 7 of us in the room, Vince at the head of the table, I'm sitting here, like that was the job. It wasn't like, I'm gonna go off into my office and see what cool things I can come up with, because it was we really did write the episodes in a large sense as an ensemble,
And then what happens when you start having, because you would send writers to set, right? So people go, they prep their episodes, they're on set, and now you have diminishing returns in the writer's room, right? Because
we still had great brains, but we didn't have as many great brains, and I wanted some of those great brains on the set to, by the way, Michelle McLaren is in the room. Where is she? You're right there. One of our absolute greatest directors. She directed so many of our best episodes, the most badass ones, like the scene where Gustavo poisons himself and poisons all the guys around the pool, that badass episode, and also when Hank kills the 2 cousins who were trying to kill him in
1 minute.
1 minute that Tom wrote. So great job.
She was nominated for an Emmy for gliding overall.
Yeah,
Episode.
what you wrote with that amazing sequence in the prison where everybody gets killed inside of 2 minutes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, what you wrote. What's my point of pointing that out? There was a
On
point.
set.
I had a point.
You're sending writers
were on
to
set.
set.
But because I wanted,
less brains in the room.
because we had that was my point. We had amazing
Had
directors.
to watch her like a hawk.
No, the directors did not need watching, but it was always, I felt it was additive. It was an additive thing to have the writer there on the set. The director's directing, no one but the director's directing, but having the writer there as a source of information for the director, for the actors. But I was always torn because I wanted them to be there, but I didn't want them to leave the room. But became a little, I wouldn't not say diminishing returns, but it was Sort of like the movie or the play 10 Little Indians. It's like the room starts with 8 people in it, counting Gordon Smith, who was taking notes, and where is he? He's over there, and who was in the room taking down everything we were saying. It started with 8 people, and then it was 7, 6, 5, and sometimes it was only 2 or 3 of us. But
the seasons kind of followed a structure. And this is an old metaphor, but it's a little bit like I Love Lucy on the conveyor belt with the candy going faster and faster, because what would happen at the beginning, you have everybody there, and things are kind of moving along, never as fast as you want them to, but they're moving along, and then production starts. And as soon as production starts, breaking slows down. And it slows down for a couple of reasons, and one of them is, of course, we all have an interest in what's going on in production, which is going on in Albuquerque, and that kind of sucks some energy out of the day. And then also, people start leaving to produce, and later seasons, people also started leaving to direct. And so it really would get very small. The first season, George and I have traumatic memories of the first season because we moved the writer's room to Albuquerque, and we followed Vince around with the board, and Vince would be on the set. And we'd be the 4 writers we'd be kind of hovering around with the board like traveling salesmen. And there are pictures of us, leaning on a car with the lights of the production in the background, or we were just desperately trying to break those last few, kind of running between the raindrops. And fortunately, we never had a situation quite like that again. But it would always be when we got a little bit more down towards the end of the wire, and it was because there was production.
What about when these scripts are published? What was the input that the directors had? I would imagine people would say, okay, well, we can scout this type of location, there's that kind of stuff. What if we do that? Maybe that opens up story opportunities. It sounds like everything was incredibly thought out, but did the very, very talented, smart actors, I would imagine, would say, hey, I feel like I've been playing this note, can we do this? Or, did they have input to their characters, and then that was addressed in the rewrite, or did that ever sort of derail a story or change an arc, or was there part of that, was there a feedback loop coming from set when new material was published?
Well, to start, and these guys can help with some of the particulars, but to start with, yes, you want the feedback. You want the feedback from the director. You want the feedback from the actor. Sometimes you think you don't, but if you're being wise, you do, because just like I said a little while ago, if I had written all of these by myself, it would have been a much poorer series. It's the same with if you just leave it all to the writers. And I admit, I've said it many times, I'll say it again, I'm a control freak. And that's okay, but you gotta know, if you hire good people and surround yourself with good people in front of the lens and behind it, you are an idiot if you don't listen to them, especially when they are very adamant in their belief that there's a better way to do something. If you don't allow this wonderfully collaborative medium to be just that, if in other words you don't take input from the director, from the actors, from the director of photography, from the production designer, from the location manager, from everybody, from all the department heads, you're not getting your money's worth, and you're being kind of an idiot. So yes, we did get some wonderful input. Did we ever get an arc derailed or anything by Brian? And Brian they were all wonderful collaborators and wonderful partners. But was there ever anything big that went by the wayside? I don't know that there was.
Not that I can think of.
What's interesting is, because I think part of the usefulness of having us there on the set is that we understood the intention behind what was written on the page. We understood why things were happening a certain way, and so because of that, we knew, okay, if you're taking a left turn instead of the right turn, but you're getting back to you're coming to the same place, that's a different thing than taking the story in a different direction. And because these were written ahead of time, we would always have pretty good lead time about we would have a very good idea what was going to happen in the next episode and 3 episodes hence. So if the actor would say, well, I feel like I'm doing this over and over again, and you'd take that on board, but you'd also be able to say, well, there's something coming that this is setting up. There's a reason why you're going to leave the prop in this particular place. There's a reason. What we're trying to do is this. And that was very empowering, I think, for the cast, because they could take the information we were giving them and find their own way through it. But there were, I think usually the changes, in my experience, was usually dialogue. There'd be, something there was something that didn't quite feel right, or there was a line or a word that was repeated from a previous episode that maybe, but
what was
not that often.
Is that they were so respectful.
Yes.
There was no one would ever just change something without asking. And it was really kind of beautiful collaboration.
Brian's process was that he would not read the scripts until right before shooting. So, if he wanted to make a big change, it was a little late in the game for that. But like something that surprised me was when he said that he didn't know that he had poisoned Brock. He was shooting the episode End Times, not knowing that he was the one who poisoned the little boy. He didn't know that until the next episode, which was pretty stunning to me. So.
That's interesting.
But I would have told him anything he wanted to hear. He's the guy. I mean, but he, like Tom said, he preferred it that way, which I loved. I wanted to, anyway, and that's something what you were just saying, Moira. It worked both ways. They were very respectful of us, and I wanted to be respectful of them. And one way to do that is, you hear stories. Sometimes we writers feel like, oh, I wrote it. Oh, just every comma is just perfect, And it's just, and sometimes Brian would say to me, actually, quite often it's not. Sometimes I know this because of my acting stint on Community. It's very hard.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that.
It's very hard. It's a hard job, and it's like if you don't get it word perfect, so the hell what? It just. Helen, our script supervisor, would come to me and she would say, he dropped the word "the" and he put "an," and he's got these two words transposed, and that's her job. It's her job, script supervisor's job, to point these things out. And I would say 19 times out of 20, I'd say, "What? Okay, it's fine," because if the actor can say it in a way that seems like a real person talking, that's what makes you as a writer look good. Not, I had just this beautiful flow of words and they didn't say it letter perfect. Who cares? It's just as long as the story's being told.
Well, it sounds.
I think there's 100 ways to do it, but every word is not a pearl as far as I'm concerned. Sometimes they are very important, but who cares most of the time?
Well, it sounds like an incredibly collaborative room. Were there any weapons in the room, Vince? Anybody want to talk about this?
Were there any weapons in the room?
Were there any weapons in the room?
You want to talk about getting shot in the face?
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to make too
we're
much.
We're good at ducking and covering.
Yeah, I mean, there were, there was a paper airplane launcher. People would bring us little this and that. They would bring us little devices, and there was an airplane launcher that was Vince repurposed to shoot razor blades. We ducked that one, but there was also, when we're interested in firearms in general, and Vince had a BB gun. Is it a BB gun?
Soft air gun. It shoots the little hard plastic pellets.
It's shot, yes, little hard plastic pellets.
That ricocheted.
It's a very small office. There's not a lot of places to put the target up.
But if I were shooting at a target, or you're shooting at the writers for their pitches?
Well,
I never actually aimed at it. I never actually shot it.
You never aimed
Not
at
on purpose.
No, but it's not a big office. There's not a lot of places to put the little target. It's got a target which is sticky paper on it, and so for some reason the target ended up being on the front door that you would use to go to the bathroom up the hall, and I went to use the facilities as one does. And when I came back, I opened the door and I took a round to my face. And for the rest of the day, whenever anyone pitched anything, it was like, you remember as we were saying before, Vince shot Peter in the face.
So
I want to point out that I shot you with a Nerf gun and not a soft air pistol. There's a big difference.
I believe that was the BB. That was the
No. You would have.
it sounds like it hurt, Vince.
Okay.
We were all jealous. It was favoritism. Shoot me, Vince. Shoot me.
What was the gun though? What was the gun with the really soft, squishy things, and then you took it and put a thumbtack.
Oh yeah, that was the
thumbtacks
Nerf
on the
gun.
end.
That
You
was
shot yourself in the thigh.
In the thigh, yes. I have video of Vince with a dart sticking out of his thigh.
Well, this is good because he.
It sounds weird out of context.
But you know what? See,
This is
It
like
would
my
make perfect
favorite
sense to
story.
if you had been
No,
there.
because you taped a tack to the end of the Nerf dart.
Yes.
And you loaded it in the gun, and you looked at us and you go, "What will you give me if I shoot myself with this?" And I said, "My eternal respect." And you totally did it. It was the best.
I
And then
didn't
you were
actually
like,
think it would
"Ow,
pierce the
that
skin,
hurts."
but it did. Yeah.
But then we
Yeah,
made you
Gordon
sit
had to
there
get
with the
the
tack in your thigh
first
until we
aid
could
kit.
take pictures.
It really is like Thanksgiving
for my
with
art.
a
What can I
family.
not my family. We're
You
not
spend
shooting each
so
other,
much
man.
time in a room with these people. It's really like I've probably spent more time in a room with these people than I have waking hours with my children. And it's like, everyone, it's like in any writer's room, but you start to know, like, there are certain things, like, when Vince starts doing the thing with the thumbtack on the BB, or
The
everybody.
self-flagellation,
Yeah,
do that
it's just
thing on
like-
the forehead.
You just gotta let it
Gets the
run its
ideas
course.
flowing.
Well, it actually sounds more like hunting with Dick Cheney if you're shooting.
Yeah.
Dick Cheney would have shoot himself over and over again.
One thing that I thought was really interesting this past year was Anna Gunn wrote an editorial in the New York Times that she was getting a lot of negative press online, not press, feedback from fans that people hated her character. There was a lot of hate for that Skylar character. Could you tell us a little bit about that? What were you cognizant of it? Did you just think it was a bunch of cranks on the internet? Did it affect how you approach that character? Because I was very surprised to see that. I thought that was an incredibly well done character, and I have no idea who was writing that stuff, but it was enough for her to feel that she needed to make a public statement. So could anybody
I
kind
think
of...
the ladies, the women should.
It was something that I think most of us were aware of. Vince famously stays away from the internet, so I think you had heard about it. I think this is a common problem in shows. I mean, I know in The Walking Dead, I think Lori had a bunch for her character.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Dexter. There's a lot of shows.
I wrote
There's a
all
lot
that
of
stuff.
shows.
Let's move on.
But no, it kind of was an issue. And I think in the later seasons, it started to come up in the room. I think Vince was a little concerned about, not wanting to make her unlikable. And we actually talked a lot about it. And it kind of got to the point where it was like, we have to do what, as we always do, like, where's Skylar's head at? Like, what would this character actually do? Because you can't kind of force someone into likability. I mean, one of the issues with Skylar is that she's an impediment to Walt. So she's always going to be, disliked because Walt's your hero. Walt is your entree into the show. And to kind of try to change that would go against the spirit of the show, and it wouldn't make people who hate Skylar like her. Like, a lot of those people they just hate her, and there's no really changing that. So it did come up, it was discussed, but it was something that we decided we have to kind of stick with, like, the spirit of the show as opposed to what people on the internet are saying.
Did you want to say something?
I was just going to say, the thing I think that was particularly confusing and distressing to Anna as it went on was that the attacks became personal. It was really strange. It was like people weren't able to separate the actress from the character, and
they got highly gendered, and just very personal attacks against her as opposed to the character. Whereas, like, if somebody hated, one of the dudes on the show, they weren't quite as personally vicious. And I think that's what drove her to write that article.
And you can say Gustavo Fring was an impediment to Walt, but so I think it was a very complex. There's a lot. It was a big stew of complex. But it hurt her feelings very much, and it troubled. She's the sweetest lady in the world. She's a very sweet lady, and and a very feeling lady, and I don't think she'd be able to do her job as an actress if she wasn't able to be in touch with her emotions. So it was tough for her. She did it. She never stopped doing a great job, though, and she never, to her credit, and none of the actors did this, and God bless them all, and it's no small feat. They never, any of them ever came to us and said, and you know, they don't ever come to you and say, gee, yeah, my character's not likable enough. They come to you and say, you know, for artistic reasons, I'm thinking, you know, I should cuddle a nice, an adorable puppy in this scene. Or it's always for, you know, but it's like, it's tough to not be liked. I mean, I couldn't, you know.
You know, Brian kind of went through that a little bit as Heisenberg got darker.
Did he?
Toward the end of season 4. I think he was having a really hard time processing the darkness in Walt with who he understood Walt to be as the actor who was personalizing
Dean went through it too.
him.
Dean, after he was shot, hated being in that wheelchair and wanted to, I mean, what he was becoming and what he was doing to Betsy, you know, was hard for him.
Yeah.
He did. But to their credit, I mean, he didn't like it, and he might gripe about it, but he never said, I'm not doing this, or he never said, hey, let's have a rewrite, guys. It was, you know, sometimes you know, they always soldiered on. So, but yeah, you're right. Those are good examples. Yeah.
And Vince, you stay off the internet pretty much?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
It's a dangerous place.
Yeah. Let me. I want to read some reviews from the first season, if I may. Based on Sunday's opener, Breaking Bad falls around the middle of the pack in the new wave of cable dramas. It's no Mad Men. Breaking Bad has a fine eye for visual detail and a sense of black melancholy humor that wouldn't
Cut
be
his
out of
mic.
place. What's that?
Cut his mic.
No. Black melancholy humor that wouldn't be out of place on Weeds, though the latter show is more tightly plotted. I just want to show.
You got names that go with those?
Yeah. I'll show you. You know this woman. You
This
do.
is why I never looked this shit up.
Breaking
Because
Bad.
this was 7 years ago, and I'm
Breaking
like,
Bad
where the
reminds
fuck
me of
said that?
Saving Grace. So you really turned that shit around. Good job, buddy. Let's do some questions. Can we do some questions from the audience? And I would just like to, okay, don't ask what are you looking for in a writer, they're not going to hire you. And don't give us, oh, should I change my script because my agent said, we don't want those questions. So ask about Breaking Bad because it's fantastic.
Do not change your script because your agent said.
There you go. Okay, thanks for answering my question, Vince. Go ahead.
Hi. First, thanks for having this press or writers panel. And secondly, thank you for teaching me my what I think is the most valuable lesson as a writer, and that is don't care whatsoever about what Mythbusters says is possible for a show. But in terms of believability, how do you write a show like Breaking Bad, which revolves a lot around coincidence, like characters meeting in certain places, and still keep it believable?
I wouldn't say there was some big. What was that? That's weird. There were a couple of big moments of coincidence. The biggest one probably, would you say? I'm going to guess. Would you say is when Walt sat down at the bar next to? Yeah, that was a big moment, and we talked a lot about that. And my personal philosophy on that, yeah, I think some of these guys said that's kind of a big coincidence, isn't it? My personal philosophy is, if it's a coincidence that's ultimately bad for the main character, then it's kosher, then it's acceptable. If it's a coincidence that's good for that person, for that protagonist, then it's lazy. But in that case, it in short-term fashion, it wound up moving Walt's machinations a little further along, but it also it led to him killing or allowing, he didn't kill her, but he allowed Jane to die in the next scene, Jane, Jesse's girlfriend, and therefore he lost a big chunk of his soul. We talked a lot about that, about coincidences, but I think they're kosher. I'm just repeating myself. Yeah, that's my take on it. If they're bad for the character, then they're okay. Is my take.
Thank you.
Let's go over there. Hey, Phil.
Hi, thank you for coming. I just had a quick question. I know that you guys are dealing with a lot of very controversial issues, but they're also very dangerous. Was there any point during the process of writing the show that you were actually like apprehensive about name dropping certain organizations, or wherever kind of freaked out?
I remember there was a time in the room when we were talking about cartels.
Yeah,
and
exactly what I was thinking,
that's
yeah.
probably what you're thinking about.
Yeah.
And
Narco
we
corrida.
definitely.
I always assumed they would just go after Vince. So I never-
Yeah. Yeah, we just
I had
published
no
his
problem.
address. No, and we definitely talked about making sure that any names that I don't think we actually ever named the cartel.
No.
You did.
Oh, with the wires.
Yeah.
Or we made it as general as possible
Okay.
so that it wouldn't really highlight a specific
And-
person. But there was
And with
definitely.
They're
Jack,
also-
with Jack and the Aryan Nation
Yeah.
stuff, we were very, very careful. And all the tats that everybody was wearing were all created by us very carefully to not connect with any existing.
And by the way, and this is
organization.
And they enforce their copyrights like crazy.
They
so,
do.
You know,
No,
yes.
all-
This is yes.
very meticulous.
all joking
Nazis.
aside, it's true. We couldn't use real tattoos, or we had to Greek
Yeah.
them up because they are copyrightable material. The tattoo artist can see it on TV and say, "Hey, wait a minute," and then sue Sony. So yeah, it's amazing the things you learn when you're doing this kind of stuff.
Thank you. That's very interesting.
Great. Let's go here.
Thank you so much for doing this. I'm curious, we've heard a little bit of this tonight. What was the best storyline that you had to throw out for whatever reason?
That's a good question. You guys are better at remembering than
Hey,
stuff.
George,
than me.
jump in.
I'm thinking, so that's.
I mean, mine's always the chisel to the back.
Oh yes.
That's always. We had this character who eventually grew into Gus, and the original pitch for an introduction for him was you have a dude walking through like a Lowe's or a Home Depot and talking to this other guy, and it's basically like a business deal gone wrong. And then the scary dude says, pick a number between 1.
He buys a chisel.
He
as we're
buys a
talking.
chisel, just very casually, and he's like, pick a number between 1 and like 22 or whatever, and the guy picks a number, and that's the vertebrae that he chooses, and he bangs the chisel and paralyzes him. So that was, I mean, I
You're
just thought
welcome.
it was so twisted that I just loved it, and then we never got to do it.
Vince pitched that, as I recall, the very first day in the room,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Holy shit! Holy
really?
shit! Yes."
Yeah.
And then
It
we
was an
thought
early
maybe
pitch.
that was what happened to Tio.
We talked about that.
Yes.
You know what that it wasn't a storyline, but it was a little detail that we couldn't pull off for some reason. But it
The
was
pooper thing?
No, not the pooper. Not the pooper.
There's always
we just
hope.
couldn't find a way to make that work. But it was after Walt runs over the two bullet heads.
Yeah.
And then the next episode, he kills the two guys. And the next episode, he's giving Junior a driving lesson.
Yes.
And we were going to have a shot where it was you could see the Oakleys of the sunglasses hanging from the undercarriage as he's giving his son a driving lesson.
No, you know what? And
Yeah.
you know what? Thank you for pointing that,
That
out.
made it
That-
script.
that's the one I missed the most because that was my episode that I was directing. I wrote the scene where you're underneath a car and you see the Oakleys with one lens missing, hanging, and you're like, "What am I looking at?" And it was Junior with the driving instructor at the DMV driving his dad's car, with this gore, and little bits of hair and skull and underneath the car, and he pulls up, and the guy said, "Well, you remember, you got to work in your parallel parking." And when we were, I remember we were scouting. We scouted. We found a spot to be at DMV office, and then we were trying to figure out. This was before GoPros. We were trying to figure out how to fit the camera underneath there and what vehicle to use because it couldn't fit under the Aztec. And then they said, "We don't have enough money, and your script is timing out at like 68 and a half minutes." So I cut it. You're right. I would have loved to have done that scene. Oh man, yeah.
Let's go over there.
Thank you. Well, thank you for coming out. I had a question about act structures on the show. A lot of TV dramas use a 5-act structure, and pretty much every Breaking Bad script that I've been able to dig up on the internet uses 4 acts. I was wondering, was there a specific reason you went with 4 acts? Do you think it provides better narrative opportunities?
I just took it, Jenny can tell you, and Tom too, we just took it directly from X-Files. It's the exact same structure the X-Files used. There's a teaser, cold open teaser, and then the title sequence.
It's such a better way to tell stories too, because on so many network shows where you get fewer acts, there's just no way to get a run of drama going. I mean, you start a scene and before you know it, it's time for a commercial, and it's like, how can anything interesting happen in that structure? So
And you need a big act out. So there's something big has to happen every 4 minutes.
That was just our style to always try to end every act with something, some twist, something interesting that.
Yeah, I find that 5 and 6 acts are the networks push those to fit more commercials. No writer really wants that. You just
we were asked to do that, and then our compromise was just because we used to just go teaser, Breaking Bad logo, and then Act 1 would be 1, and we just stuck another commercial in after the teaser.
Yeah, so if you notice in the early, it runs right into Act 1, and then we put the commercial break. But I was blissfully unaware of this awful thing until my buddy Frank Spotnitz, who I worked with on the X-Files, he did a show for ABC, a reboot of The Night Stalker, and he had me write it. I was writing an episode, and he says, oh, and by the way, there's 7 acts, counting the teaser, or whatever it was. And I said, what? I said, "What? This is madness," and it is. It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah,
I worked on that same show, and I remember I had a 4-minute act. It was one act. I was like,
was that the long act? It's madness.
Let's go here.
Hello. As a former Albuquerque and Santa Fe actor, I just want to thank you all for employing lots of my friends. And Mr. Gilligan and the cast and crew, you have always honored the people of Albuquerque so nicely and the state itself. And I just want to thank you for that. And for donating all your set dressing to the Goodwill there in Albuquerque. I was there that weekend and everything sold out in 45 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a great city. Albuquerque is a great city, and we're coming back to do Better Call Saul. We are. Peter and Jenny and who else? We wanted to get all these guys back, but
Tom
these.
Tom.
But yeah, Tom, I couldn't see you. Out of sight, out of mind.
He's there.
If you're not in his eye line, you don't exist.
But Moira and Sam and George are just too big for their britches now to come work for us on that. No, they got great things they're working on. But we would have got as much as the old gang together as we could.
Go ahead.
And Mr. Gilligan, you touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think it's in season 3 when Walter delivers the "I am the one who knocks, I am the danger" speech. As a writer, do you know at that, and when you're writing it, that you have just scripted something that's going to be that iconic? Or is it not until later when the actor adds their interpretation, or even later after, once the audience receives it, that you know that you've really got something? That's
Well,
really
that was
gonna-
Jenny Hutchison. Yeah, we wrote that episode. I'll answer that with an example of it's not like that one, but it's no. I think that for me, when I've had those moments like Magnets, bitch, I get that one quoted back. I wrote that one. I get that quoted back to me a lot. Magnets, bitch, and yeah. No, I'm sorry. I didn't even say it right. Yeah, bitch, magnets. That's it. Yeah, bitch, magnets. Fuck was it? Anyway, I get it quoted back. Sorry for all the cursing. I get it quoted back to me, and I think I don't think the honest answer, when you are lucky enough to have your line quoted back to you by a stranger on the sidewalk on the street, I don't think the honest answer is that you saw it coming. I don't think I would not hesitate to guess that if Aaron Sorkin were here, he would have said, yeah, when I wrote the line, you can't handle the truth, I knew it would get quoted back to me over and over again. I think so much of it is the magic of what the actor gives to it. And I'd like to say it's all the writer, but it's we start it, and I'm proud of what we do, but it's a group effort, and so much of it is what the actor brings to it, and I personally, I wouldn't see it coming, so.
I did give Brian a giant hug after that scene because it was kind of amazing to watch in person.
Cool. Right here.
Who's the person here that lays all the Easter eggs in the show? And what I mean by that is, before the season finale, I went to go watch the pilot again, and one of the very first scenes is when Walt is working at a gas station and he's rolling a barrel. One of the last episodes, he's rolling a barrel. Who figures that stuff out from season 1 to season 6?
I'd love to take credit for that one. That one's just a fluke. But but some of the ones, I mean, we all do. It's all a group effort. Let's name some ones we actually did on purpose.
We use a computer program. It's generates these things and inserts them into the
It's a
script
final
in
draft
random
add-on you get from the website. Yeah. Well, let's name some we actually should take credit for. Well, there was the one in Ozymandias, your episode with the pants.
The flying pants.
Yes.
From the pilot.
You got to look real close to see them, but they're
Yeah,
there.
they just sort of, I don't know if you guys spotted those, but when in the dung beetle scene where Walt's rolling the barrel, he rolls on past those moldering pants.
I think we were really excited by the idea that this sequence was going to take place in a location that we'd seen before in season 1, that it kind of helped us to create that sense of circularity, and then of course it had, in addition to the pants, that amazing teaser where you go flashback to the very beginning of the show. A lot of it was
we did
just
think about those, and we loved sort of finding places to.
I think it's the highest compliment that and it's not just you. We've heard a lot of people, a lot of fun things that I wish we could take credit for. The thing I'm most proud of is not that we had it all figured. You and I talked about this on the phone earlier today. There's really, I can't speak for everybody who does this job, but I think it's nearly impossible to have it all figured out from the get-go. I think your next best hope is to mine your own past, your own history in the show, and make it and look for moments that you can let resonate, like the pants and whatnot, so it feels like it was all of one piece and all with a purpose from the get-go. That's what I'm happy to take credit for, is that we mined our own history, and we worked very hard at that, although we did not have it all figured out from the get-go. I'd be lying to say that.
One of the things I think that contributed to that was using the same cast members. Even if there was a small role like the manager of a Pollos Hermanos, and this person maybe had one line we saw once before. Now there's going to be a scene with the manager of the Pollos Hermanos, and my initial, when I first started the show, I thought, well, now we'll get a real actor, and we'll get somebody who's going to bring more to it than this person who was really only cast to do one line. And on the show, we would go back and use that person who was established. It became kind of a creative guideline to try to use what was already there, and I think it really paid off quite well for us.
Let's go there.
Hello, how you doing? My name is Bashir Savannah. First of all, I would like to thank you for such an incredible show, and congratulations for all the success. I have a one first question is just very quickly. There's a documentary that's out there called The Real Walter White, and it's about this guy that's in Alabama. Yeah, and his name is Walter White, and he was a meth addict. And
a dealer, yeah.
He was a dealer, and pretty much like it's totally not the same thing. But at the same time, I wanted to know if you guys were aware of that whatsoever.
I didn't realize it was a documentary. Someone sent me some email with some blurb, and I haven't really had a chance to read it yet, but I saw that. It said The Real Walter White, and it showed a guy. Yeah, I didn't realize it was a documentary. Wow.
But my real question, I mean, that's great, but my real question was about the last episode. Anyway, the last episode, man, it was great. But I wanted to know all the pitch ideas that came out, the juicy ones, the alternate other ones where Marie comes in and stabs Walter in the neck or whatever you came up with. I wanted to hear about at least the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Four best
discarded stuff, stuff we didn't. You guys, I'm so glad these guys are here. I forget so much. What were some good ones?
This wasn't for the finale, but when we started the last 8, one of the very first pitches in the room, which we luckily discarded, but I think led to a lot of what we had, was Jesse was going to go kill Walt, but Hank came in instead, and Jesse took Hank hostage and forced Walt to watch. Walt's looking through binoculars, and he shoots. Jesse was going to kill Hank.
That's right. I was pushing that for a while. That was insane. I'm so glad we didn't do that.
It was very early in the season, and it morphed into what you saw on screen.
Because there was another
that would
one.
have been insane.
There was another one though that we also you kept going back to, which is that Jesse's in prison. He gets caught. He gets put in prison, and Walt takes the
Jailbreak.
M60 and just mows down everybody going back to get the.
And then it was a
rescue.
prison bus, an armored prison bus.
Yes.
Because the question was, what do you need an M60 machine gun for? What do you?
And everybody wants to know, do we know what we were going to do with that gun when we started this season 5 with it? We had no clue. We had no
Vince
clue.
just really wanted that gun.
Yeah.
It just seemed like a great way to open a season.
And we were so stupid that we started the second season by having Walt find Ryson that we didn't know what he was going to do. So we had two things. We didn't know what he was going to do with these items.
That
So
was
we really set ourselves up great. With
I
that.
will say it was very unusual for us. We generally wouldn't do things like that without having a sense of where it was going to go.
And
we actually did, not a lot, but we did with T.O. Ding Boom was something we had on the board.
Yeah.
We knew T.O. was going to blow up Gus probably, but we didn't know how we were going to get there.
We
It was
didn't set that up, though. Like,
one
Billy
character
was
specifically, Marie. I wanted to see any alternate Marie stories.
We definitely
because-
talked about Marie shooting walls.
Yeah.
We did talk about Marie shooting walls.
Yeah.
You're welcome. You're
we
welcome.
had her shooting the UPS man.
Did you just win a bet or
We had
something?
her shooting a lot of people. Yeah.
I recall her shooting the UPS
We
man.
had her shooting a UPS dude accidentally with her purple gun. But no, we totally did. We totally talked about Marie going after Walt because of Hank. It did come up in the room. It wasn't, I don't think it was something that was ever seriously going to happen, but it was something that was discussed for sure.
But this also, and everything said, this sounds like I'm putting the lie at everything Sam said earlier about the organic process. We did come at this story both ways. Some of our proudest moments in the room were being purely organic and saying, what does this character want right now? But sometimes we did inorganically say, okay, we're going to put a machine gun in a trunk, we're going to plant our flag thusly, and we're going to come hell or high water, we're going to figure out what it means. We did chip away at it from both ends.
And then it would be months of us watching Vince bang his head against the wall saying, why do we do this?
Is there any way of changing it now? I remember that coming.
Yeah. Let's do a question here.
My question's about like kind of where TV's going right now. I watched Breaking Bad from like the very first episode, commercial breaks, everything. It went really slow burn for Walt. And my parents just started watching it and finished it last week. And I feel like that those are two different versions. Like I could never see it happen that fast because I can't unknow that. And I just want to hear your take on like kind of this new Netflix age of what's happening to TV.
It's anybody who anybody hadn't said something for a while.
Wow. I appreciate the watching it as it appears version of television because it feels more of an event. I mean, everybody watching at their own pace kind of doesn't feel as special to me because everybody's anticipating the next episode and waiting to see the next episode. Whereas if you just sort of dump them all on everybody at once, it doesn't feel the same.
You lose the community experience when you have an opportunity to binge watch, I suppose, is the main difference, for me, that when it's appointment television and you can't wait for Sunday night, and then everybody talks about it the next day, and you have this shared conversation.
But I'm also thankful for binge watching because everybody got to catch up.
It's fun.
The simple truth of it is, I agree with what you're saying, but I'm old school. I watch still. I've got a TiVo, I've got all that stuff, but I still watch. I usually invariably sit through the commercials because I'm a lazy bastard, and I don't think ahead to tape anything. But we would not be sitting here talking to you guys if not for this SVOD technology. So my hat is off to it, even though I do not partake of it myself particularly. If people had not been able to catch up with Breaking Bad after their friends and family members had said, hey, this new show, you need to check it out, they would not have been able to catch up on this hyper-serialized show that we did in the absence of this SVOD technology as typified by Netflix. And you would have never heard of the show because it would have probably been canceled after season 2 or 3. I'm not even exaggerating, and we wouldn't be up here now talking about it. So I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I really do. I'm not being facetious. But I do feel a sense of community when oddly enough, it's a weird thing. It's what you really get in a movie theater when you see the people around you. But I can always imagine it when I'm watching a Charlie Brown Christmas last night, which I've seen probably every year since I was since it first aired in the late, whatever. And I'm thinking of all the other people my age and younger watching it all around America, you know. But on the other hand, it's there's a weird feeling of unseen community that you lose with the Netflix. But on the other hand, it kept us on the air.
I kind of disagree a little bit on losing a sense of community on the binge watching, because I know a lot of people who binge watched Breaking Bad, and there is something about losing sleep and being so immersed in a show where you see all the details, you're able to see like the connections between episodes, and all you can do is talk to your friend who just watched 30 solid hours of this TV show. So I think it's interesting because I think there are good things on both sides. Just to defend binge watching a little bit, because I've done it myself. So.
However you want to do it.
Let's do a question here. We want to try.
You guys talk a little bit about interacting with AMC and Sony. Were they really looming over this questionable show and suggesting and pulling things in directions? And was there ever a point where they just said, "You guys are all right. Do whatever the hell you want"?
They were great T-shirt, by the way. Twilight Zone. They were very good to us. They were very good to us. They did not fiddle fuck with us. They did not note us to death. It was not death by 1,000 cuts. And that has been my prior to this experience. It has been more or less. X-Files was bulletproof. I was only an employee on that, but X-Files was kind of bulletproof because it was so tremendous. It was such a juggernaut, and the folks at Fox, both studio and network, let Chris Carter do what he wanted, and as they should have. And AMC and Sony were very. And by the way, we didn't run roughshod over anybody or anything like that. They gave us notes. And by and large, they were good notes and smart. We did not enact every single one of them, but
They were minimal.
They were respectful and they were smart, and they were not notes born of cowardice. Of ooh, this guy's so unlikable. Can we change it for meth? Can we make him? He's a Robin Hood. Can he? Whatever, you know. It wasn't that. Thank goodness. And I got to tell you, if it had been, it would have gone two ways. We would have been fighting like hell with them, to the point that he either fired me or shut the show down, or it would have been just, I would have finally, you know, I give in. Just stop beating me. I'll do it your way. I don't know which way it would have gone. I hope I would have quit. I don't know. But thank God it didn't go that way. And there's got to be a lot of good shows out there and movies that have just been screwed up by, for the most part, they're well-intended notes, but when they're born of fear, it's just a shame, because fear does not make anything better. Notes born of fear don't.
I think, to use because we only hear about negative experiences with notes as a rule, and one of the notes that I remember, and I was only peripheral to it because it was my first season, was Christina Wayne at AMC had a feeling about how the music was going to be used, and
it was a great note.
Yeah,
a great network.
Do you want to talk about that? I thought that was really. That's kind of third hand for me, but she really she felt that the music should be spare and not underline the emotional moments. And I think that was something we started using the cues a little bit differently, partially under that influence of that note, or you did really.
It's true. My pilot director's cut was wall-to-wall temp music, because that's what I was taught. That's what TV does.
Yeah.
Because it's like, hey, you got to tell people what to feel. You got to tell them what to think and how to feel. It's just, we've done it in television and in movies for so long that we don't question it. I didn't question it until this network executive said, "Do you not believe in the story you're telling?" And I said, "What does that mean?" She says, "Well, you're telling me how to feel with all this BS music you've got slathered in here, puttied in, troweled in here, laying it on thick there. Less music." And she was absolutely right. That was a great network note that made the show better. So.
Okay. We have about 10 minutes left, so let's do like a speed dating type question. So fire your questions.
It's not their fault, it's ours for taking too long to answer.
That's all right. We're having a good time. So.
Well, I love many things about the show, but I love the sound design and the art direction a lot, and in addition to your writing. But I'm wondering how closely they go hand in hand. For instance, the mural that's in Jane's room, season 2, we see like the falling pink bear. Did the art director take the initiative to do that, or do you guys include that in the script? Is it do we hear, like, is it written in the script? We go from power drill to floor waxer, or how involved are you guys in directing those notes?
we tend to script a lot of those kinds of things. We think very, very visually. It's a very cinematic show, as you know, and we take kind of great pride in those kinds of moments, you know, where you see the chemo fluid going through a tube, or you know, all these really macro close shots. We loved all that stuff. So we did claim a lot of that in the writers' room, but we also had extraordinary people in art direction creating a lot of.
And the directors add, like
And the
Michelle always
directors,
added so
Michelle,
much.
yeah.
We tried to, you know what, I wouldn't say we directed on the page, because that's a pejorative. That's, first of all, if you're hiring great directors like we did, you don't need to do that. But we try to have a point of view on the page and express that through words to the crew and the director and the actors. We often said in the room, what's the first thing we see here in this scene? Because if we knew
What's
what it
the
was,
first image?
yeah, what's
That's
the
what
first
you
image?
always say.
And that's something I learned on the X-Files. And when we did that, it was not us in an effort to direct, to take the director's job away. It was an effort to, the clearer it was for us, visually and every other, emotionally and intellectually and every other way, the clearer it was, period. And so that everyone could understand this is the direction that we all need to pull the rope on together. But then the director would take it and run with it and make it, come up with stuff we would never come up with in a million years and make it that much better. So, yeah.
First, I want to say my best regards from Turkey, you know, because we love you from there. And second, did you guys ever use a chemistry counselor, or do you guys have a chemistry major, any of you or something?
I never took a chemistry class ever in my life, I hate to admit. I love science. I love science, but I have a very layman's understanding of science. But we had talk about who found Dr. Donna. We had a wonderful.
Donna found us. She did. Dr. Donna Nelson was one of our science advisors, and she's a professor in, I think, is it Kentucky?
Oklahoma, University of Oklahoma.
She's a brilliant scientist, and she actually reached out, I think in season 2 or 3, and said, you know, if you guys ever need any help. But we also had the DEA chemists who were consultants for us.
We had a wonderful DEA chemist out of Dallas, Texas, who helped us out greatly. The great thing, who was it that said it? I think David, no, it wasn't David Mamet. David Mamet said the great thing about, I just have to write convincingly. I don't have to write accurately. I may be misquoting Mr. Mamet. I've never actually met him, but I love his writing. But the other thing is, you know, sometimes we call ourselves affectionately, you know, we're professional liars, you know. If you can, as a writer, if you can make it seem real, and of course the best way to do that is to make it as real as possible. But, you know, a lot of the science I thought was accurate was disproven on a recent episode of Mythbusters. So, but if it seems real, and you got to start with it being emotionally real. That's why I love writing. I love being able to make up stories. I love the human capacity for hearing stories and appreciating them. You can have a Superman, so you can have a story about a time travel, or a guy with a cape who can fly through the air, or killer robots, or you can have all this lunacy, you know, telling these crazy fun stories that, just so long as the human behavior is understandable and realistic and accurate, just as long as people behave like people, we as an audience can buy just about anything, just as long as the people behave like people. That's where it all starts. That has to be realistic. The rest of it doesn't have to be, but the human behavior has to be realistic, the emotionally realistic. I don't know, got off on a tangent.
Let's do a couple
Glenn's
more
yelling at
questions.
me now.
Yeah.
I'm from Pico Robertson. We love you guys over there also. One of my favorite episodes is the one with the fly that Walt chases down a fly in the lab. I think it's kind of brilliant in a kind of a Kafkain way. And I wanted to know what's behind that. What is it? Maybe it's a big question. It's not a speed dating question, but what's the psychology?
No, it's a very simple question. We ran out of money.
It's called a bottle episode.
Yeah, Moira and I wrote that, and it was born out of sort of a production we sort of had, we really needed to have an episode that was on our sets. And I mean, that was the initial impulse, and then
we decided to take it to the extremes.
Yeah.
Because we could have had a variety of locations based on what was on our stages, And we just thought it would be the most interesting to do it like a Pinter play in one location. And
that one started with Walt imagining a little girl in the super lab. Do you remember that?
No.
Yeah, he was imagining it was going to be the plane, one of the
I think that
victims of
was
the
you.
plane. I did not have. He was going to imagine one of the victims of the plane crash. A little girl was in there, and that was an
I don't
early
even
pitch.
remember that. Wow. I
remember
believe
we
you.
sort of talked about doing the stages of grief also at one point, but in any case, it was a necessity that turned into something pretty fun.
Thank you. Okay. Let's go there.
All right, I actually do have a bet. There's this great aerial shot towards the end of the series of the neighborhood, and then you have all the abominous tents popping up. So I have a bet with my writing partner that was supposed to indicate to the audience that Walt's cancer was coming back. Like the neighborhoods were DNA strands, and that was cancer cells.
I've heard this.
popping up.
I've heard this before. What do you think of this?
How much money's riding on the bet?
Yeah.
It's just bragging rights, and you can't put a price on that.
I think.
Well, since I can't get a taste of it, I can't get a taste of bragging rights.
I think
I'll make it go any way you want, just as long as I get a little piece.
Well, yeah, we can work it out. Yeah. I just look too much into it, or.
I don't think we're that smart.
You know, if you think it's there, then it's there.
No, you lost.
I don't think you're wrong. I think it's a great interpretation. We were not actively thinking of that. We were thinking, as always, of visual ways to show his empire growing. I wasn't thinking in terms of cancer, but I do like that. I'm not sure we knew the cancer was coming back at that point, did we?
As of that moment, we didn't. The cancer was not back in our minds. Not until we started the next set of 8 did we decide. The cancer came back.
We thought the cancer wasn't back in that episode. As
That's
I
right,
recall.
we did. You have a much more poetic soul than we do.
Well, he's not here, so I'm going to tell him I won.
Guard that jealousy.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
We'll back you up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. My name is Tony Diaz. I just drove like a madman from Palm Springs to get here. I almost killed like 10 people.
It's all about Breaking Bad, not Mad Men.
Okay,
right now.
thank you. Okay, question. Location. Who chose the location? Did somebody invite you? Did Albuquerque, New Mexico invite you? I mean, my brother lives in Albuquerque, and now it's like the new Hollywood. And people are going by his house, because his house is where people vanish.
Yeah.
And he says like every day there's like 5-10 people just stopping there and taking their picture.
Wow.
So location. Who chose the location?
Location was born of money. I hate to admit, but it was the original pilot I wrote for Riverside, California.
Wow.
And
See, I knew it. I knew it.
And
Either
it was-
Desert Hot Springs or Riverside.
Well, it was Riverside, and then the Sony folk, the money folks said it's a lot cheaper to shoot in New Mexico because you get a rebate. And I said,
That's what my brother said.
well, but you know what? It worked out really well artistically because what we wound up doing was doing a show that felt very much, to my mind, like a Western, which would not have felt that way in Riverside. So I'm very happy that it was Albuquerque, but it was a decision originally born of financial realities, of the limited money we had to spend. We wanted to maximize it, make it go as far as possible.
Great decision. And last thing, now I know why the show is successful. I can see your synergy here. I mean, it wouldn't have worked without all of this here. Thank you.
That's true.
Thank you. It was worth the drive.
All right on, man. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. Unlike other shows such as, let's say, Lost or The Sopranos, your series ended up not leaving any questions. It was an interpretive. I guess my question is, was that planned out? Is that what you were going for? Or was it brick by brick? And why did you want to leave your audience and your fans without any questions? And what was the process like?
I'm glad you didn't have a lot of questions left. There are probably some people who do. No, but I mean, we wanted to be satisfying. We wanted to end, and there's nothing wrong with ending a show with questions. I don't think, especially if that particular show demands it. But our show, it felt like a very closed-ended story to me always. It felt like you start off, it felt like, as I was pitching earlier, this is a guy who goes through a great deal of change. We wanted the thing to be self-contained, and we wanted to be, above all, wanted to be satisfying. So it seemed to us that we should not leave any loose ends. Questions, as long as they're on purpose, are fine. Mystery is good, confusion is bad. Something that is thought-provoking and prompts questions is good, but loose ends that feel like untied bits of business that didn't wind up feeling half-baked. That was always bad for us. So we tried to make it as satisfying as possible. I'm glad you found it just so.
It was done beautifully.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Right here.
Okay. Gus is such an awesome bad guy. And we've gotten a few glimpses into his past, via flashbacks. But was there going to be more of his backstory revealed that just never ended up?
That's a good question. And the fact that he was from Chile was George's idea, and you named him.
Yeah. Gustavo Fring. It was actually Frings because I was a fan of German soccer. And there's a famous German soccer player named Frings. But the S, you always have to put a little apostrophe after it and everything. It's a real pain in the ass to write that. So we But I think we all, this whole Chilean backstory we had discussed in the room. And I don't think we ever thought it was actually any of it was going to make it to the screen, because there was something about just defining it in our heads and having that sort of explain who this character was for us, and then not really. I don't think we were huge backstory people in general, but then it got to be something that was it was functional in the present story with, T.O. and how does this link in. So it became necessary sort of to tell this part of the backstory. And so I think, in for penny, in for pound, we just gave glimpses of it. But I think, we had this whole elaborate backstory about how he worked for the dictatorship,
Pinochet,
Pinochet regime, and there was this whole thing like black, they called it like black cocaine, which is a special thing made by the Pinochet regime, and how he was this special chemist, and he had tutored people into this whole. So it was very elaborate, but we just wanted to tell as much of the story that would make it intriguing and define sort of his choices in the present story. So.
But we got into Gus's backstory so heavily because we had to give T.O. a motivation. We had to understand why would this guy blow himself up to kill Gus Fring, and that was the whole reason why we shifted into doing those flashbacks.
Okay.
And mystery is good, confusion is bad. We wanted a little Mysterio, so yeah.
Cool.
Let's do last two questions.
Hi, my name's Asha Landon. Thank you so much for being here. I was so fascinated by the two potential father-son relationships between, obviously Jesse, but also at the same time with Junior. Was his disability, was that something that enabled there to be two father-son relationships? Do you know what I mean? Like how early was that?
That's a good question. I don't think this is the beautiful thing about a TV show. You have enough time for it to, you get to plant the acorn, and if you're lucky, you have enough time to watch it grow into a mighty oak, as it were. I mean, there's kind of a famous story that I was all set in my mind to kill off Jesse after the first season. So I guess the answer implicit in that is I was not thinking of this wonderful possibility of there being a father and son vis-a-vis blood, paternity, and then a father and son, metaphorically speaking, between Walt and Jesse. I just, this is the beauty of collaboration. If Aaron Paul wasn't the wonderful, wonderful actor that he is, wasn't riveting to watch, wasn't just stellar, we wouldn't have wanted to keep him around. We wouldn't have enjoyed writing for him so much. It wouldn't have turned into that thing that you identify. And that's a wonderful thing. It's not a bad, it's funny, people always say, did you have it planned out from the beginning? I said earlier, people say, did you have it planned out from the beginning? And I always say, no. And at first I thought, well, gee, I wonder if I should lie. And then I thought, and then I finally realized it's to be embraced that it was not all planned out from the beginning. Because if you could pick and choose from all the best opportunities and talents and artistry available to you and find your way through the story based on those considerations, it makes it so much richer and better and deeper and more complex with more layers of the onion, so to speak, than you could ever come up with all by yourself, and if you rigidly adhered to your first idea. If I was rigidly adhering to that first idea and killed off Jesse Pinkman, what a poorer show this would be. So, yeah.
Okay, last question.
Hi, thank you all for being here. I'm Kristen Snyder, a host on AfterBuzz TV, and we worked intricately every week to try to predict what would happen in this show, and we were always wrong. So thank you for that, because that kept us watching each week. There's some kind of satisfaction that comes from never knowing what's going to happen and not being able to predict it. And I was always wondering the backstory between Walt and Gretchen and what sort of happened, who broke up with who, and if you guys ever considered killing Walt Jr.
Anybody?
That was like a stealth double question. Well done. We do have a backstory for Gretchen and Walt because, you know, as George was saying with Gus, you just kind of need it to understand the character. And I mean, I don't think we ever seriously considered killing off Walt Jr.
There was
talked about it.
There was the shotgun pitch.
Yeah, I don't.
That lunatic pitch I
villain.
had.
Yeah,
I don't know if you should share
I think
that.
they want to hear the shotgun pitch. From
You guys
somebody.
pitch it. You guys pitch it.
I think there was some arch nemesis. We just pitched some stuff just to amuse ourselves, but there was some arch villains, maybe even pre-Gus, that Walt had tied up in his.
It might have been the guy who killed Jesse. Yeah.
Yeah, somebody.
I was told.
Wasn't he tied up in Walt's garage?
He was tied up in a basement, in Walt's basement, and Walt had a shotgun rigged in the corner and a switch that the guy could pull to kill himself. And it was like this psychological torture of how
like
much is it
Saw.
gonna take for this guy to kill himself? And one day, little Walter Jr. comes home from school.
You're leaving out the Sawzall part with the Sawzall and the blowtorch.
Oh, I don't remember that part.
He's affixed to the wall with his tripwire and the rifle pointed at him, or it could have been a shotgun, I guess. And Walt comes down and clips 3 or 4 inches of them off every day in and day out.
This is even
starting
worse
with
than
the
I remember.
toes, and then cauterizing it with the blowtorch.
Okay. Anyway.
And I was told that from somebody at Sony or AMC that this was in your original pitch when you sold the project.
They loved it, and they still bought it.
So anyway, Walt Jr. comes home and he hears a noise and he goes downstairs and he's like, oh my God, this poor man. And so he goes over to untie him, and the guy, being the genius that he is, pulls the tripwire, shooting Walt Jr., and Walt's plan goes horribly awry.
The guy is such a tough, crusty bastard. He refuses to give in and kill himself.
Yeah.
And Walt is getting more and more frustrated, and the guy's up to mid-thigh when Walt Jr. comes down, and then the guy's he flickers awake, and he's and he smiles, and he kills both of them. He kills himself too, but it's I'm gonna get you, you
So
bastard.
show of hands. Should we have done that?
Okay, we're gonna wrap. So I'd love for everybody to just quickly say, what's next. This is a tough act to follow, but I'd love for people here to know what everybody's working on. If we could just kind of run down the line, because it's some pretty exciting projects people are involved in now. So, George, what are you up to?
Writing a movie for Universal, and I have a development deal at HBO. So,
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Great, congrats. Jenny?
I'm working on The Strain for FX, Guillermo del Toro's new vampire show.
Great, good luck.
I just finished on a show ABC called Resurrection, and now I'm going to be on Better Call Saul.
Oh yeah, and I'm gonna do Saul probably.
Peter?
Better Call Saul.
I'm just developing. I have a deal at Sony.
Nice.
I'm doing a 1-hour cable drama for Stars called Flesh and Bone.
And Vince, what is next?
Better Call Saul. And
are you directing that pilot?
I'm directing the first episode of Better Call Saul, and there is a pilot I wrote 11 years ago for CBS that is now it's called Battle Creek, that is going to be run by David Shore, a wonderful guy, very talented. I don't know. I'm not sure. I would like to direct that if it could work out, but I don't know that it's going to work out time-wise, and I don't know if there's a lot of good people that could do that.
Well, I'm actually writing a pilot. Would you consider directing that?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, send me your reel. Let me take a look. All right. Thank you. Good night, everybody.